dive in. I'll let Charles do the rest of the talking, and then we'll have our fabulous readers. So here's Charles.
So apparently I'm tall, so the mic comes up to about here. It's coming from the diaphragm here.
It's got heart.
Look at this extension on this thing. Now, this looks dangerous. All right, thank you so much, Star. Thanks to all of you for being here tonight to help us celebrate all of these fantastic creative writers and to celebrate the launch of the first Sync Hollow issue to devote itself to the creative writing contest. For those of you who don't know anything about Sync Hollow, it is a new magazine, an undergraduate-run magazine that we launched last year. We're at work right now on our third issue, or fourth issue, depending on if you count the contest issue as an issue. I think we should probably, right? So we're at work on our fourth issue, but the Sync Hollow Creative Writing Contest special issue is right now available on the Sync Hollow website. So if you want to have a chance to read more in depth of anything you hear tonight, if you go to synchollow.org, you'll see our main home webpage, and then there's a down at the very bottom of the page is a place where you can access the magazine, and it looks really slick. Thanks to the very hard work of our fantastic undergraduate staff. Just as a quick shout out to those folks, our outgoing managing editor, Ethan Trinnell, put in tons of work on both this issue and the whole last year's worth of issues. We had a whole team of people, though, working on stuff. Sean Anderson and Andrew Simpson helped organize the contest submissions and get everything ready for the judges to read and look at, helped to organize the beginning of the contest. Then we had lots of people involved, like Abby Newhouse and Parker Schofield, Justin Smith, and Abby Stewart, who did our copy editing. Then we had lots of other people who did our design, like Ethan again on that team, but also Andrew Simpson again, Madison Asbill, Tyler Hurst, Chalice Hackley. I think JC did some of that work. Kaylee Dudley did a bunch of that work. Chris Davis did a lot of that work. And then we had just a whole bunch of other folks that are also on this whole Sync Hollow team who might have done other copy editing or might have chipped in with an odd job here or there, and who are hard at work doing their work for the regular issues. So people who like that are people like Millie Tullis, Danny Green, making sure I've got a bad list here that doesn't include everyone. Jess Nani, Braden Steele, Marie Skinner, Marissa Neely, and then of course the faculty advisors also were really integral to make sure that issue got out. That's Russ Beck and Shannon Ballum, and of course Rob Coons, who was our fearless whip-cracking leader to make sure that everything happens when it needs to. So it's been a real effort, a real team effort to get this issue out. What you see up here is the cover image. It's our first place art winner for the contest by Bailey Jones. It's called Mask, and it looks great on the cover. It looks great here, but how it got framed to the cover looks awesome too. So please do check out synchollow.org. I do also want to give a shout out, because it's not going to maybe be entirely clear. I hope it's clear as we go through the evening. When you're looking at the slideshow that's playing in the background, what we're going to be seeing is the artwork of our winning artwork. And so, of course, that's Bailey Jones's work there. We also have Natsumi Shimizaki's work, Chris Davis' work, Luke Lemon's work, Janet E. Allen Hancock's work, Lauren Ducas's work, and Haley Cragen's work. So are any of you artists in attendance tonight? Anybody, could you raise your hands up nice and high if you're one of those artists who are involved? We just got an amazing, great variety of wonderful artwork this time around, and we're lucky to have your work here. So thank you guys for submitting. We've got just tons of people to thank. Star also already thanked the Writing Center and the English department. I also want to offer my thanks to those folks for their support of the contest. Also the College of Chass, sorry. I'm confused. It's like saying an ATM machine, right? We had lots of support from folks. We also had, of course, the discriminating taste of our judges, who, of course, without great judges, you don't have a great contest and you don't have a great magazine. But we had great judges. We have to thank Alex Baldwin, Matt Diorio, Mary Ellen Greenwood, Brian McCuskey, Bonnie Moore, Paige Smitten, and Isaac Tim. So thanks to all of you readers for choosing. So the way that this works is that Star has mapped out this fantastic plan that she has shared in advance with our readers, just to make sure that we can get through everybody in time. We've got a certain amount of time for each of our readers. Our readers should all be armed with the knowledge of their order and the length of time, and they should have practiced, Chris, they should have practiced to make sure that their thing, what they're going to read fits within their allotted time. Otherwise, Star is sitting right up here to kick your ass if you're going over by 20 seconds, so you better watch out. Okay, so that's it. Without any further blathering from me, I would like to let our readers introduce themselves. So readers, when you come up, please do say your name and what the title of your work is and the place that you came in, just so that everybody is aware of those things. It might make you feel self-conscious to say, hey, I'm the first place winner for poetry, Mackenzie. But do it anyway, because not everybody's going to know, and we want to give you the proper shout out that you deserve. So without much further ado, please welcome all of our creative writing winners for the contest this year. And our first reader tonight is going to be Abby Newhouse. All right. Thank you.
So I'm Abby Newhouse. My piece is called How We Fall, and it's the first place undergraduate for fiction. So I'll just start kind of in the middle before you can follow along. My husband's great aunt has passed away. He barely knew her, but his parents decided to come for the funeral, so he thought we should go as well. I guess we should wear all black? He looks through his suits. The morning sun rays pass through the small open spaces around our dark gray curtains. You can barely determine which color is which in the dim light. Isn't that more of a cliche at this point? I still lay in bed but turn to my side to watch him. I think it's just respectful. He pulls some pants off the hanger. Are these black enough? We take the road through campus. The cars move slow on this street, the speed limit only 25. All the trees have changed colors, so dead brown and gray leaves pock the gutters, the sidewalks, and grass. As we drive, the leaves flurry around the tires. We pass storms so old they actually look wrinkly, and then I see Heather walking on the sidewalk, and the car right next to her, crawling with the windows down. She looks uncomfortable, but she also smiles. That's one of my students, I say. I turn to watch her as we pass. Should we see if she's okay? His eyes flit from the road to his side mirror. Her shape gets smaller as we move forward. I don't know, should we? But we keep going, and I twist all the way around to watch her from the back window while we drive over a hill. Someone in the car opens the door. It looks like Heather might get in. I think about Heather during the entire funeral. Did she look scared? I can't remember if her smile seemed genuine. I do remember maybe seeing a hand reach out from the car door, inviting her inside. Did you see a hand? I whisper to my husband. He jumps a bit. His great uncle speaks to the audience in front of the casket, telling us stories of his beloved, but not crying yet. His skin sags on his mouth and connects to his neck like a turkey. He wears all black except a floral necktie. Tells us it was his wife's favorite. We sit on folding chairs spread over the cemetery's dry and leaf-ridden grass. The traffic passing by allows enough noise for me to bother my husband in the middle of the speech. Where? What hand? You know, my student, the car. Did someone pull her in? Oh, I don't know. I stopped watching. He turned slightly towards the speaker. I agonized. Picture Heather tied up in an empty warehouse. She has a black eye, lies on the cold concrete, hands smashed together in a tied bra with rope. And someone has stuffed a dirty rag in her mouth. Why would they do that? What kind of sick person would do that to Heather? Sure, she had her flaws. She wasn't the best student, never came on time. I don't think she even posted in the Q&A forum. But that doesn't mean she deserves to get beaten and left for dead. But of course, I don't know if that's actually happened. Everyone at the funeral stands up. One by one, we reach into a bucket by the head of the casket, and it's full of baby breath flowers. We each take turns dropping them into the grave. This is how people should die, when they're ready and old. How did she die? I asked my husband when we're back in the car. Cancer, didn't I tell you? Horrible, pancreatic cancer. So not exactly ready, if you think about it that way. So then, of course, on the drive back, even though I've tried to block it out, I remember my sister's funeral. Closed casket, empty casket, a mirage where I couldn't look inside to say goodbye. I never had that chance because I never went out to visit, never just hid my pride and smiled. My family all sat around drinking afterwards, all of us in black hats, pants, tights, shoes, makeup, tears. We drank glass after glass of scotch and talked about how each of us would prefer to die. My husband said anyway, as long as his eyes would be closed. My father said old age surrounded by his family, something he couldn't feel, just a simple exit. My mom said she preferred to be asleep, hopefully in the middle of a dream about Javier Bardem, but not the bad version of him, the version of him in the Spanish love stories. And I remember choking on the liquid in my throat, coughing, laughing, scoffing, saying I'd be sure to put that in her obituary. My husband spilled the scotch when he flung his arms open laughing, and then he cried, and he cried, and he cried. I hadn't talked to my sister for months when I found out she died. We used to talk pretty regularly, at least weekly. But after a while, I honestly didn't know what she did each day or where she lived. At first, she'd give me some details over the phone or text, things like, "Hi, just about to meet up with my date at Central Park. What are you up to?" Or, "Just saw Wicked on Broadway. You must come visit." I didn't know if she actually did these things. It had always been hard to tell with her. Events always over-dramatized, and things were always happening to her, as if she had no control over her own life. She posted pictures on all her social media sites, but mostly of her face or buildings or the front of cute restaurants. I felt afraid that if I visited, I wouldn't like what I saw. For instance, her apartment on Park Avenue, which we never saw a picture of, might have actually been a shelter for women who have nowhere else to go. Maybe that shelter was on the park. Maybe she just made her reality seem a little better than it might have been. I should have just visited. Really should have. I remember the last time I tried to call. I stood in my kitchen and looked out the large bay window. Clouds had grayed over the afternoon sky, and it made me feel cold. I poured hot water in my teapot and turned on the stove while I dialed her number and clamped the phone between my shoulder and ear. I remember feeling proud that I multitasked. My husband sat on the couch and flipped through different television channels. He changed out of his suit from work but still wore his long black socks with baggy shorts. He looked like a shadow against the window behind him. We'd never really had problems. We fell naturally into marriage. He called me irrational once or twice. The phone just rang, a steady hum in my ear, and finally her voicemail. "Hi, it's me. I can't be by my phone all the time because I'm busy living. I'll call you back when I can." I didn't leave a message. The teapot whistled behind me. I flipped my phone over so I couldn't see the screen. Thank you.
My name's Kyle Pfeiffer, and I'm the first place winner for the creative nonfiction undergraduate. My piece I'm reading is a couple of scenes from the piece's title, Flame. The sun lapped at my freckled shoulders, leaving a blanket of throbbing strawberry skin in its wake. Early June's whispering breeze evaporated the mixture of sweat and river water covering my back and legs, standing every follicle of hair attached to my body on end as it whirled around me. The snow had finally disappeared from the tips of the mountains, signaling the beginning of our swimming season. "Jump, you scaredy ass," Ryan hollered from the riverbank. "I'm getting ready," I croaked. The pale blue face of the icy river below stared up at me, patiently awaiting my arrival. The more time I spent staring back, however, the farther away it became, and I realized I had stalled for too long, allowing the long, creeping tendrils of doubt to envelop my resolve. I swallowed hard and leapt. My heart sank with my body until the bottoms of my feet met the jagged stones that coated the riverbed. I felt my mouth form a smile as I slowly floated to the surface. "Mom," I called, crossing the threshold into the living room. "Honey, please go grab a towel before you ruin the carpet." Mom chastised, heading me off as I had made my way towards the kitchen where something pungent, tempting, yet indiscernible bubbled on the stove. I started for the hall closet, but the familiar sound of a piercing falsetto singing along to Shania Twain's "Man, I Feel Like a Woman," emanating from behind the closed door of my father's study, caught my attention. "Dad!" I yelled, throwing open the door to his office. Dad had returned home from work early today and danced in his chair jovially, punching numbers into a budget spreadsheet. Startled, he shot around to greet my voice. "Hey, bud, where... Son, you're soaked. Go get a towel." I nodded and flew down the hallway to acquire one. I sprinted back to Dad's office and threw myself on the floor near his feet. "Dad, what is a vagina?" I pointedly asked, wasting none of my precious time I had here with him. "Ryan told me that's what girls used to, well, you know, go to the bathroom." His eyes widened in shock, and trying to conceal a smile, he managed to sternly admonish me not to repeat the things I heard from Ryan. "Lunch is ready, Guapo," Mom tenderly called from the kitchen. "Thanks, babe. I'll be in just a second," Dad replied, swiveling back to face his computer. "Why don't you go eat and I'll meet you in there?" When Dad finally sauntered in, he exclaimed how disgusting it smelled, and he and Mom both laughed as he threw his arms around her waist and kissed her deeply. I imitated a vomiting noise, which Mom and Dad both ignored. "You're sure a good lady," Dad said, resting his head on Mom's shoulder as she returned to washing the dishes in the sink. "You're a good man, Aaron," Mom replied, leaning into his embrace. "I hope you know I'm trying to do better." Dad's tone grew more solemn this time. "I know it, and that's why I love you." Mom turned and kissed him on the cheek. Fearing I would lose my lunch, I threw my plate into the sink, and it departed again into the torrid June afternoon. They arrive out of nowhere and can submerge an entire town in a matter of minutes, and according to the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, flash floods kill more people than hurricanes, tornadoes, and lightning every year. All of the preparations in the world shy of Noah's Ark itself pale in comparison to the power of an unprovoked and unexpected flood. "How many times do I have to tell you to turn out the damn lights?" Dad slammed the switch at the bottom of the stairs as he thundered up towards me. His pants were soaked from the knee down and covered in gray bits of carpet that he spent the morning tearing from the basement floor. Usually tranquil and calm, Dad was in rare and destructive form today. His chameleon temper often mimicked his surroundings. I could see a squall raging behind his eyes. "I'm sorry, I was in a hurry," I sheepishly mumbled, knowing full well that I had simply forgotten. "How about you start paying for the utility bill for a few months? Maybe then you remember to shut them off. It just doesn't seem to get through to you," he continued. Dad had gotten close enough now that I could smell the impatience on his breath. "I'm sorry." I lowered my eyes and got out of his way. He shook his head and blew past me. He shook his head and blew past. I pounded down the stairs towards my room. My little brother Lane was sprawled out on the cold and now barren floor, mashing the buttons on my purple Game Boy. As I entered, he tried to quickly conceal it behind his back. "How many times do I have to tell you not to use my stuff?" I barked menacingly, grabbing the console out of his hand. "I'm sorry, I forgot to ask, but mine is dead. Just let me save my game." He reached to take it back. "No, you're done," I pushed him, and he stumbled backwards. "What the heck, Kyle?" He shoved back, sending me instead. "You little bitch." I shoved him hard, too hard. He flew back into the dresser with a crash and fell to the floor, sitting motionless for a moment, before letting out a faint cry. Instant remorse clutched my throat, but before I could utter an apology, he lunged, knocking me back into the opposite wall. Before I could think, my bald fist connected with the bridge of his nose. He stumbled, unbelieving. Never once had I hit him like that. My gut suddenly filled with fear. I dashed through the still open door and up the stairs. Violent screams and hurried footsteps following close behind me. Dad was waiting at the top. He hit me, Dad." Lane sobbed uncontrollably now, his body heaving with fury. I realized I had no defense. "Is that true? Did you hit him?" said my father, his voice cold and threatening. "He was playing my game and he wouldn't give it back." I immediately wished I could retract this flimsy excuse. "You hit your brother over a video game?" I nodded my head, but before I could blink, what felt like a poorly aimed sandbag slammed into my chest, stealing the air from my lungs. I tried to cry, but the air had not yet returned to me. I stumbled to find the couch so I could sit down, still gasping for a breath that would not come. Mom entered the room, alerted by the sounds of the fracas, and watched my father lower his clenched fist.
Hey everyone, my name is Andrew Romrell. I was the winner of the poetry, the undergrad poetry first place. Thank you all for being here. So this first one's called Painting a One Night. It was inspired by Anne Sexton's For My Lover Returning to His Wife. There's an epigraph by her. It says, "She is solid. As for me, I am watercolor. I wash out." Anonymity is key, the lifeblood of the culture. Beauty and non-solidity. Doorbells that ring like knocks on wood invoke the protection of nature and God and latex, if only. Breathing, I cry myself a martyr, a product of my people, of my time. Rather, I am a watercolor. I am a sweet aroma of peach skin, a color of pale blue pillowcases and pink sheets, a rainbow spectrum of faded pigments that leak beside creaking, groaning, shifting lights and walls. And then I am gone, slipped away to the click of a brass lock. I assure myself I know what this was. I know I am watercolor. I so easily wash off. The second one is called Release. I was young when I first saw that word. 7 years, 3 months, and 17 days, if I remember right. I didn't understand the term scrawled so carelessly on a bathroom stall with a safety pin. Fag. It cried from silver gleaming beneath congested coats of green paint. I didn't know then that they meant me, that they scrawled it on my skin when I was 7. 9 years and I'd see the word again, carved purposefully on myself. Scarlet relief flowed from my name, fag, released between my eyes, a whirl of pain and scars and blood. I wrung the truth from poisoned nerves as if I could bleed the word from my body if I just cut deep enough. Vibrant red could conceal my admission, sear attention into my mind. Fag. Blistered lips and skin, I wept in admonition, ached for every wrong, screaming, God, God, release. All while blind and bleeding, crumpled into the bedroom mirror, wondering whatever happened to that boy in a bathroom stall reading a word he didn't recognize was him. This last one, it's a pantoum, which is just a form that has a lot of repeating lines. And it's called The Pulp on Which We Write. Aspens blacken with slick, dark strokes, hammered in by slathered smoke. Cascading blossoms smudge red-inked words on crinkled pages. Hammered in by slathered smoke, luminous fingers sear crisp rain of red-inked words on crinkled pages. Rage slides streaming down pressurized tongues, and luminous fingers sear smudged sweet mist from my mouth. Rage always slides streaming down my pressurized tongue, pushing the words out, out, out. I smudge sweet mist from my mouth. I bleed, burn, and scream, pushing the words out. Writing is a war in which I bleed, burn, and scream. Cascading blossoms smudge a war on writing as aspens blacken with slick, dark strokes. Thank you.
Hello. Just freestyle it. Okay. Hi, my name is Catherine Christian. I am honored to have won first place for fiction in the graduate category, as well as third place for poetry. Tonight I'm just going to be reading an excerpt from my fiction story. This is called Breach. Each year, when the explosion of crimson and gold colors the highlands, the Clark Fork River grows thick with salmon. Beneath the shadows of the pregnant waters, their fat bodies battle the current for the spawning beds. In turn, the diesels and men in trucker caps encroach upon the river, their silver boats dotting the surface of the current. Allison thinks of the cyclical nature of the salmon's lives, their tragic deaths lining the shores, polluting the air with the stink of their rotting flesh. What inner prehistoric instinct drives them to journey through the veins of inner America to lay their eggs? As Allison rounds another curve in the highway, she thinks of their tails pulsing forward in the Clark Fork that runs beside the road. She's 48 miles from Missoula. The salmon are far from their destination, and the headwaters they'll lay their eggs, only snapping to the surface to snatch a twirling crane fly, a fallen beetle. 5 months ago, Allison felt the push of bile in her throat, the swell of her breasts against the cups of her bra. She knew what it meant. She waited to no avail for the blood to push from her, waited for the thick scent of rust to fill her nose. She had bought the test, peed on the stick, and watched as the red lines crossed formidably. As she rounds another bend in the road, a small push of fear fills her core. She carries this child inside her, a small yet monumental secret that she's hidden from Jack. The life of a woman's body is intensely private. She can choose to speak of the morning sickness, the swell of her breast, the dull pain in her lower back, but she doesn't. She swallows her secret with heavy wool sweaters and sports bras, carries herself in a posture that is upright and normal despite the ache. If Jack notices, she blames it on the chill of fall air, the pressure of hard ranch work. But she can't keep the secret for long. Soon her stomach will spill over her waistband and the hours in bed will extend well past 6 in the morning. Now as she drives toward Missoula to her mother's grave, making the serpentine turns through the canyon, she wonders how much longer she can wait until she tells Jack. The small curve of her stomach is more prominent, the fabric of her jeans pulling tight at her sides. The shock of pregnancy, Allison thinks, is like the hopelessness of drowning. You let the cold water kiss your legs, let the sand filter between your toes. You wade further, deeper, the arches of your feet melding perfectly with the slick rocks. But you slip. The moss tricks you, a log snags at your skin. You're down, plummeting into darkness. The eddy is deeper, the current stronger than you thought. Your body fills with water no matter how tightly you keep your mouth shut. The foreign substance, once seemingly docile, overtakes every orifice, leaks liquid poison, an invader. Your lungs scream, beg for air. You wish to break the surface, but the weight of your body keeps you down. The water pushes you into the stones, entangles you, until you aren't really a woman or a human at all. You're part of the river, a new organism, a new being. Allison flies by the mileage sign. Half an hour to Missoula. She turns up the car radio's volume, white-knuckling the steering wheel with one hand. Her mother's presence is everywhere. Memories seep from the cobwebs of her mind, boxes cracking open, and snippets of conversation with her mother are relived. Even the waters of the Clark Fork River seem to hold her image. The reflection of the cobalt sky and the spit of rapids reminds her of her mother's body gliding through the water, her fiery hair tailing behind her as she swam. There are patterns that cannot be erased. Through the long native Montanan bloodlines of her family, the women all died young. Too soon, cancer spreads across their ovaries or knots within their breasts. She had never met her grandmother, a true ranch woman who ran cattle on horseback while her bald head was wrapped in a bandana after countless rounds of chemo. Her mother had told her the stories. The women in her family worked hard, married young, produced ranch kids, and then died before they met their grandbabies, died before they could let their bodies rest and reap the benefits of their difficult lives. They were survived by husbands who had to tell their children and grandchildren stories of their mothers and grandmothers who seemed more like idyllic ghosts than the sinewy flesh and bones that carried them sturdily through their short lives. I don't believe in curses, Allison thinks, but if they're real, then the women in my family are bewitched on the day they breach their mother's wombs. Allison knows that Jack will adore the baby. She can almost hear the hammer as nail meets pine, the echo of blows reverberating around the walls of their garage. The crib will be built quickly, and the rocking chair and the dresser. The women will come bearing silver and gold wrapped gifts, furnishing pastel-colored clothing or the forest green boxes of Pampers. They'll sip weak mimosas, place their hands on her belly, marvel at the thickness of her prenatal hair, run through it with their manicured nails. The men will twirl Jameson in tumblers, heartily slap Jack on the back, chiding him of life being over as he knows it. Good luck with the nights, they'll say, or say adios to your sex life. And Jack will beam, gazing at the glow of Allison's flushed cheeks, the protrusion of her rounded belly. The child will burst from her in the spring, squealing and emancipated. The child will love Allison at first, die for the warmth of her bosom, the sweetness of her milk. But what if all the nurturing, all the care isn't enough? The child will not know their grandmother. The stories of her attraction to water and the elements will slip seamless from Allison's lips, but they will never swim with her, twirl her red hair with their small fingers. The nightmare that plagues her spins a web of darkness in her mind, that Allison herself will die too soon, following the women of her blood to the grave. Her child will have to live with the pain, that same seed of fear and longing for something that was never quite there, just out of the reach of their memory. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Kyoki Kemp, and I took first place in nonfiction in the graduate category and third place in fiction in the graduate category. And I will be reading a little bit from both. The first one I will read from is nonfiction titled Faux Firestarter. My mother tells me I killed my baby brother. My father insists I didn't. Our houses had 2 stories, and I remember that my little brother would crawl down those stairs into the kitchen, and then he'd open up the dishwasher so that he could get on the counter. After he got on the counter, he'd open up a cabinet and try and mix hot cocoa or orange juice, sometimes both of them together. My father had given him some of his old toys, some heavy metal Tonka trucks, which he loved to toss down the stairs. My dad would sit him next to the older kids during meals, and he'd throw food everywhere. His deep, dimpled grin breathed warmth in the room like a furnace. I remember that house. One time, I left a plastic gun outside, so I went to pick it up. When I did, I got bit by a hive of fire ants who made their home inside my gun. Dad rushed me to the bathroom where he drew up a cool bath to soothe all the scorching bites. I can recall just a few memories of the day my brother died. Someone, either one of my parents or the neighbors, called 911. I watched smoke smolder up from the roof as I sat in the back of an ambulance. They put a clamp on my finger to monitor my heart rate. The thing pinched so hard that it kept on taking off. I quickly burned through the EMT's patients and soon grew too irritated to do anything. In a dream, I am haunted by the ghost of a possible memory, something that may only exist in dreams. I feel, sense, through the 3 times gravity haze of the dream memory that I walk up the stairs. I go to the room where my baby brother Gaby sleeps. I open up the window and look at the tall sunflowers. I pop open the matchbox and flick the phosphorus tip in the light. The brief red hair of the head bites my fingers, so I throw the stick outside. I do it again. I don't know how many redheads I extinguish by tossing them out the window. Sometimes in dreams I see the curtains catch fire. Other times I smell the sting of smoke as it curls into my nose and tickles my throat. But the uncertainty always lingers. Did I do it? Something I do remember, the talk I had with the fire marshal. My mother whispers in my ear, tell him what you told me. I know I don't look the man in his eyes. I don't remember feeling guilty for starting the fire. One of the firemen had given me a stuffed bear with long golden fur that I named Blue after the main character in Bear in the Big Blue House. I did it, I said. I went upstairs and opened up the window and threw the matches outside. He asked me, are you sure, son? My mother responded, of course he's sure, aren't you? Yes, Mother. I never remember doing it, just recollections like snowflakes on my eyelashes. I see them brief and bright before they melt away. I dreams where I strike the match, then I fade away. Dreams of how I killed my brother. My dad says he found a letter written by one of my mother's daughters from her previous marriage, stating that she had been smoking weed upstairs and tried to dispose of it when she thought she heard someone coming up. This letter, which I've never read, my mother absconded with in a divorce. I don't know who to believe. Anytime I look at fire, I wonder how my brother fares, and if he watches over me or protects me. I ask for forgiveness sometimes as I look into fire, just in case I did murder him. I didn't know that playing with matches could be bad, though part of me wonders if I had the dexterity in my tiny fingers at the age to light a match. I still have trouble lighting matches. At other times, when entranced by the hypnotic flickering of the flames, I think of my mother and wonder what kind of woman blames her son for that sort of thing. Has she no comprehension of the scarring and questions this will cause this boy growing up? Killing someone, on purpose or on accident, leaves an invisible scar in deep tissue. Worse still, not knowing the truth. How can a man atone for the shadows of possible action? This comes from my fiction story, Desert Rats. Ignacio strolled forward to Nestor. He pushed Nestor out of the way, but made no attempts to take the gun from him. Ignacio walked behind the chair and grabbed the man by the shoulders and leaned in next to his face. Don't think you ain't getting, sorry, don't think you ain't going to die, homie. If the boys don't kill you, if the boy doesn't kill you, I will. After he said the last word, Ignacio took a knife from his pocket and locked the blade in place. Before Nestor could ask him what the hell he planned to do, Ignacio stabbed the man in the thigh. This time, the man screamed so loud the gag failed to stifle him. Blood oozed out the wound in his thigh. Ignacio wiped the blade on the man's shirt. Nestor switched the gun to his other hand in order to dry his sweaty palms on his jeans. The chair almost unbalanced as a man thrashed about and threatened to come loose at the joints. Ignacio then kicked him in the chest, toppling him over. With nothing else to do, Nestor just watched as Ignacio pummeled the man in the stomach until he stopped squirming. Nestor could do it. He would do it. No problema. He never killed a man before, but people did it all the time. He shot enough bad guys in video games, and his compañeros wouldn't let him kill somebody who didn't deserve it. And that, Ignacio, is how you do it. Cierto, no? Then he spit on the man. Always spitting. Why does Tipo spit so much? Why'd you do that, Nestor asked. We could just kill him. There ain't no need to torture him too, sabes? As soon as he said it, he regretted it. Nestor knew his place and had stepped over the line. Ignacio stood pretty high on the list of essays you didn't want to mess with. He shouldn't have second-guessed him. He couldn't back down now. Worse than asking questions is acting like una perra with his tail between his legs. Thank you.
About that time, all the coins fell out of my pocket at Arby's. Cruel punishment for being hungry, but also there's a certain bliss to be had, even at 2 o'clock in the morning. I guess you could say I've been air drying my hair to save the whales again. You sure need a lot of saving. I'm willing, but my flesh is weak. Do you think cowardice has anything to do with not wanting to shovel your neighbor's driveway, even though he exhumed you out of yours the day before? And do you think loneliness languishes in self-pity at the grocery store when there is no one to carefully load gallons of milk and egg cartons into your car? Do you think the moon cares that it can't talk back to us when we go on and on about landing on its face? I would care. I didn't think I would have to redefine what it means to be a really messed up enigma, but here, let me write an essay all about humiliation. And each kiss will be a new paragraph, an indentation where we step out of this quarantine. Oh dear, I have lain here for so long. That summer we looked through cathedrals made of trees, and they stood there just like he stood in the doorway on a feverishly black morning. Don't wake me up yet, I remember saying, with my eyes closed. So now driving past another sign welcoming me to the redwoods, this halo of sand refuses to retreat into my subconscious. I think if my inability to commit had been driving, we would have crashed against a wall by now. Last week, Scott Kelly posted his photos from space since he floated there for something like 378 days. Gosh, what a terribly long time without gravity to hold you up, but it was probably a nice break for gravity. It wouldn't have to be a scapegoat for man's inability to stand up straight. I fell in love.
I fell for it. The lamp fell and broke. Get over yourself, says gravity. In return, I will give you these heartbreaking views of Australia. That shiny pink organ swelling and falling again. How does an entire continent end up looking like a three-dimensional grain of salt? And wow, look at America, a t-shirt that wasn't supposed to be dried, but too late now, much smaller than we all thought. And the usual things comfort me, you know. Children, kittens, the leftover hairs when he shaved in my sink. A token, I bet. And last of all, I am wondering why those Mexican women always sweep the streets. Every morning, even as dirt settles repeatedly. So reliable. Honestly, I'm not making this up. It lands on everything, but still they sweep. If it were me, I would just leave it there.
I'm Brandon Hawks, undergraduate, second place fiction. I'm just going to read a couple of brief excerpts from this, so I highly encourage you to go to synchollow.org to fill in the gaps. In the wetted down folds of cattails and grass, Christian rolled a ball of mud over and over in his fingers until it was smooth and perfect. Benji watched sections of the hanging mist through the stripes of green. His fingers are probably just as cold as mine. Hopefully they're colder. Maybe he'll get frostbite. He let his thoughts run. Christian staring out the living room window, Dad backing down the driveway for another fishing trip, Benji sitting shotgun. Poor Christian waving a fingerless goodbye before going with Mom to the grocery store. He smiled to himself. Something hard clinked off the side of his head and landed in the mud next to his mat of cattails with a sticky plop. A little clay cannonball wrenched him away from justice. Benji's eyes shot fire. Christian put a finger to his pursed lips, nodding skyward. Excitement poured from his face. He pointed two fingers at his own eyes and then to the ground. Ducks, he mouthed, tapping a finger to his ear and pointing into the leaden sky. Like a dog contemplating a biscuit, Benji's head cocked sideways. Through the grayed-out vapor of the drizzled autumn evening, he heard an obscure squeak rise above the whirring cheese plant. No, whistling. They came in quick succession, growing louder, then fading into the misty royals of the dirty cotton sky. Christian brought a call to his mouth from his wind chime necklace to coerce them back. "Get ready, Benny boy," whispered his father. "They're coming back around." The group of 7 descended in front of the makeshift blinds like fighter jets approaching the deck of a carrier. In a controlled dive, the leader swooped down in a giant arc with 6 others behind, wings locked, gear down. His green head shimmered against the doughy rolls of gray in the dusky reflection of the pond. "Take him!" His father stood leveling his cane to his shoulder. The ducks tried to halt their descent and stalled, flapping against their momentum. Boom! The shockwave from his father's gun compressed Benji's chest. He wasn't ready. Boom! Boom! Ba-boom! Boom! Christian was standing to his right and had just ejected his final shell. An iridescent green head bobbled in the brown water, turning the ripples pink. A brown hen folded and fell towards the cloudy, pestilent liquid. A third crashed downwards like a small pile of black, wet leaves against the ashen sky. Benji managed to stand and was pointing his shaking gun at the leader of the duck-footed squadron. It quacked and stretched and rose away from his fallen wingmen. "Come on, Benji, shoot!" His father's hairy finger pointed towards the escaping duck. Benji's eyelids squished together, his jaw clenched, and his cheeks pulled the corners of his mouth upward in anticipation. Click. Where was the boom? He opened his eyes. "Pull the hammer," Christian shouted, trying to jam another shell into his magazine. "You've got to pull the hammer back!" Benji lowered Grandpa's old single shot, gripped the hammer, and clicked it into place. Rising, he leveled just ahead of the sparrow-sized duck as it climbed for freedom. Boom! The barrel fixed to the escaping mallard bucked. A tuft of feathers ejected from its wing like a leaky feather pillow smashing into his brother's face. "I got it!" Benji squealed. "I got one, Dad!" Neck stretched to the sky, the bird fought to regain altitude, left wing flapping madly, right pinned against its body. It trundled downwards, disappearing behind a stand of maples across the stream that fed the pond. The only evidence of it ever being hovered in the sky like ash. Under the cold, darkening sky, he was sweating. The tops of the cattails swayed gently with the late autumn breeze. Christian and his father's silhouetted hats faced each other. Bills bobbed, shook, and nodded in conversation. A flash of brilliant white popped through the long, slender leaves of the blind, capturing the moment for Mom's photo album. Christian and Dad hunting ducks. Christian and Dad skinning a deer. Christian and Dad holding a string of rainbows. Benji holding his new pet duck with the shot-up wing and the floppy neck. He ached for a flash, for a page in the album, for a stringer of fish. No longer able to hold on to the twisted corkscrew barrel of the duck's neck, he released and stretched his fingers against his sweater. Its neck unraveled and slumped over Benji's arm. Pressed against his breast, he felt it expand and deflate and expand. I'm sorry. Deepening coils of dirty corded sky began assembling into a sooty black, and he balanced in a murky wetland, waiting for the world's consent. But when the world stops and breathes upon the willing, fairness is only a word. Thank you.
Hi, thank you all for being here tonight. It's a real honor to be included in this group of people. My name is Justin, and I won second place in the undergraduate nonfiction genre. I'm reading an excerpt from my essay. It's called Genesis 1:26, and a wise man named Andrew Simpson once told me, don't make your title a scriptural reference. I'm not going to look it up. No one's going to look it up. He didn't say that to me. He said that in a workshop to somebody else, but he did say those words. So I prepared an epigraph. This is Genesis 1:26. Then God said, let us make mankind in our image, in our likeness, so that they may rule over the fish in the sea and the birds in the sky, over the livestock and all the wild animals, and over all the creatures that move along the ground. And one more note before I begin, I mentioned a case in this. A case is a brand of tractor. I'm talking about a tractor. Okay. That winter was ferocious. Dunes of snow crawled across the fields. My father and I drove his father's little case up the bench to clear a single-lane path down the bench most mornings. The whiteness of the land blurred into an obscure horizon during the day and cut an indisputable boundary with the blackness of night. One Sunday morning in January, a fox lay dead in our garage. We found it while we were loading into the car to go to church. Mange, my father said. Mel Mortensen said he's found 3 the same way in his barn. Looks like they've been dying this winter. It looked like it had been in a fight. Only patches of fur remained on its claw-marked pink hide. It had half a tail, and black trails crawled from its ears to its nose to its eyes. You guys go ahead. You shouldn't be late, my father told my mother. Then he and I scooped the body into a snow shovel and cleared enough snow behind the propane tank to lay the fox against the cold ground, then covered it with a mound of snow. By February, my circadian rhythm was backward. Rather than sleep, I read the Bible, the Book of Mormon, and the Doctrine and Covenants from beginning to end. I dozed through the day and missed so many classes that my mother took me to a pediatrician, then a neurologist, and then a homeopath, and then a psychiatrist. I dreamed and prayed through March. The black mist haunted me by day and settled into me by night. The nightmares continued. One day, while the snow was crystallizing under the new spring sun, Father was helping my maternal grandfather tear down a shed and chop the beams into firewood. They told me to stand away from the spinning saw connected to the back rotary of the case. The blade screamed like a dying rabbit. I wandered away into the labyrinth of hand-built outbuildings and abandoned rusting farm implements that was my maternal grandfather's dairy farm. I walked underneath grain augers as big as brontosauruses. I filled my jeans with rusted bottle caps and dropped tools. I smelled molding feed, snow-damp plywood, thawing manure pits. It was snake season. My mother's father's house filled with snakes every spring. They bred in hidden pockets in the depths of the crawl spaces, then slithered out of air vents and cracks in the foundation and into the swamp of acreage around the dairy farm. This is precisely why it was a dairy farm. the lowest point in the valley. Crops could only drown and mold. But I wasn't thinking about snakes. I was looking for treasure. Lifting rotted 2x4s and old tin sheets revealed gopher tunnels and mud canvases embossed with the detritus of October. Sometimes I'd find skeletons of mice. Sometimes I'd find artifacts of my grandfather's past. I flipped over an overturned trough and discovered chaos. A ball of water snakes sucked over into and through one another, somehow slower and faster than time. They did not notice that I watched. This was everything, an orgy, a source. I lost myself as I watched the metallic sheen of their scales bend in the cold, fading light. They reeked somewhere between the world of urine and perfume. It was a planet. It was a spiral. They scared me. For a moment, I considered crushing them under my boot, stamping their alien bodies into a pulp. But I didn't. Neither did I blink. "Where do you get off to?" my father asked later. "Nowhere," I said. "I mean, I don't know."
Hi, I'm Lily Tullis. I took second place in poetry for undergrad and third for nonfiction. So I'll read you 3 poems and a little bit of an essay that doesn't make that much sense when you only read a little bit of that essay. So, okay. The first poem is Tradition. Until the Enlightenment in Russia, you could cut your wife's nose off. Often fathers handed their new son-in-laws a whip during the wedding ceremony. Slightly less often, the bride would take off her husband's shoes their first night. I picture her on her knees, and she would find a smaller whip in the shoe beneath his soles. Did her eyes linger on his feet when her arm reached above her head to hand that last bit over? My darling, I don't know why I remember things like this. Sometimes it feels like I seek them out. Sometimes it feels like they're all there is. Sometimes it's like we're passed down from 2 tribes, and maybe I'm doing something historical and brave marrying you by burning it all and giving slippery union to the same strange history. And the next one is Grocery Store Line. You leave me there to pick up Cheerios. The woman behind me scratches her arm, says, "Don't you hate it when your friends think you're on drugs, but you're not?" Later you tell me she comes into the comic shop every once in a while to sell her boyfriend's video games for bail. His name is Left Eye because of the star tattoo blackening half his face. You say she flinches around him, walks behind him. I wonder where she sleeps, what that looks like. And a month ago I killed a mouse. 1. The cat had played with her for hours. Her stringy pink legs shook under his paw. There was blood on her soft back. And there was something horrible about the way the thing looked on her side, breathing like she was about to hold her crush's hand for the first time, just try to breathe under all that crushing. The mouse was too familiar to kill, but too familiar to live. I was tired, and I fell asleep after I dropped it, all mangled, not yet dead, into the tall black can, her eyes so wet and dark. 2. He cracked you open in a bathtub, February on your arms. You were butter, you were always butter, only you didn't know it. How did it happen? He told you it didn't happen. You didn't fight him off. He pulled out and came on the first quilt your sister made. He came on the patch that was softest, the kind of soft you've seen advertised for baby quilts, lemon yellow with polka dot bumps, underbelly soft. He came and you said nothing, and he got up to leave, and you let him, your body stripped off like a peeled carrot, the underskin shining with hurt. He told you to walk him to the door. You wore your roommate's blanket. He told you to take it off. Had you kiss him goodbye after he took an apple from the bowl on the counter. You did nothing. He left you unpeeling, trying to lose all flesh in the bathtub. Take off, take off.
There must be something untouched beneath. Your crying had never sounded that languidless, smallest animal. So this essay is part of a bigger essay that I'm going to read you a small part of, so good luck. Yeah, go look it up, and if you want the even longer version, don't. So it's called Pieces of Girl, Black Knot, Blood Clot. And it's set up like an annotated bibliography of Plath's work, which makes more sense if you see it. So I'm going to start with a Plath quote. I shall never get you put together entirely, pieced, glued, and properly jointed. That's from her poem, The Colossus. Okay. Plath's first collection of poetry, and the only book she saw published was The Colossus. The book received mixed reviews. While the work showed Plath's careful and controlled language, the poems hardly stood out from the other work being produced by modernist poets. After I read Daddy, I looked for more Plath at the public library. All I knew was her name, which I typed into one of the library computers, and I chose The Colossus over Ariel, as the local library had both, because the title sounded more interesting. The only Ariel I knew was the mermaid, but I didn't know much about colossuses. I remember clinging to a few things the first time I read it. In the Manor Garden, she calls pears fat little Buddhas. In All the Dead Deers, it was inspired by an archaeological museum in Cambridge. It had a coffin from the 4th century containing the skeletons of a woman, a mouse, and a shrew. The ankle bone of the woman had been slightly gnawn. And I thought about that ankle bone a lot, because bones are what are left over. I thought about what the term left over implies, that something is gone. Some selfness is left. Surely there is something other than the bones that get gnawn down to salt. Leftovers. I suppose I was always taught a kind of dualist Christianity, a real body separate from soul philosophy. Once in Sunday school, my teacher put on a white cotton glove and wiggled her fingers around in it. She asked us if the glove was the one doing the wiggling. We said no. Without the hand, the glove was nothing, a shell. The glove is like our body. It's just a covering, a house for our spirits. Our spirits are what animate us. The spirit is us. This made sense to me. I was happy to know that my personality would continue long after my death, and I never paid much attention to how my body grew or changed or touched. I saw no place where they, the real me, and the physical thing bumping around could connect. I wasn't worried or consoled about an eventual resurrection I was told I was promised. The idea of being resurrected always got me turned around, so I generally avoid thinking about it. What age would I be? Could I fix my hair? Would my teeth be before or after braces? If my body was perfected, would it still be mine? I didn't care much one way or another if God gave my body back. Mom always joked that I was her clumsiest child, the least aware of my body. I was always mismeasuring how much space I took up and bumping into things, doorways, and table edges. Whenever one of Mother's ceramic plates or bowls or mugs were broken, my family assumed I did it. I would forget I was holding things sometimes, or forget how much space they took up, or they would just slip through my fingers, just before reaching the counter where I assumed I was putting them. I was always getting scabs too, not because I was brave, I was timid, but I always had some scab along my elbow or chin or forehead or knee from being a klutz, and I was a notoriously bad picker of scabs. I loved the way the fleshy cap of a scab lifted off, and I craved the way the skin or blood underneath looked cleaner, more vibrant, more color. Certainly this bright red or fleshier pink was a close layer closer to whatever was underneath. Anyone close to me has gone after me for picking my skin for as long as I can remember. From the time I was a little girl, my mother warned me that I would be covered in scars if I kept picking, and then I would wind up ugly, and then what would I do? I couldn't have cared less if I ended up ugly. It seemed a small price to pay for the pleasure releasing scabs gave me. When I grew up, the picking didn't stop, it only changed locations. I would pick up my face when I got zits as a teenager, and by the time I was in college, my skin was too clear to be reliable, so I began tearing and biting at my lips, especially my full bottom lip. Lip picking gives a particular kind of pleasure because it's so painful. A tiny rush. And it bleeds, but it's easy to hide. Your lip was already a nice pink, and you can suck your lip without anyone really noticing. You can be anywhere at all, and your lip will be bleeding, and no one will think anything of you sucking it. But tearing my lips made me feel strange when boys wanted to kiss me, because if they noticed, how could I explain? So I started wearing lipstick, good, thick, matte lipstick, because it would look ridiculous if I chewed it off. Although I sometimes still did, leaving behind a bright color around the edges. But then I just attacked the skin around my nails. Anything that looked imperfect got ripped right off, or any invisible bit of skin I could feel would be pulled at until it managed to lift up. And this was better, because my hands were hardly my best feature, only having a few scars from childhood. But also worse, because people notice when your finger is bleeding. They think you must not have noticed. People don't like to see it. They think something is wrong.
Simpson, and this is really short. It's freestyle Catherine. And I took third place in undergraduate fiction. I guess I'm kind of a dick in workshops. So thanks for that, colleges. And this piece is called I Am Your Messiah. An owl flitted across his vision, floating in and out of the beam of his headlamp. He continued along until a glint on the trail caught his eye. A spider that looked like a crab no bigger than a golf ball crawled along, eyes glinting in the lamp signaling. It seemed to plead with Howard, sending out lights of its own, begging him not to leave it alone in the darkness to fall prey to some grotesque feeder of the night. Its body, a sickly white blue, all legs and eyes consumed too soon by the abyss at Howard's feet. Almost like a signal for help. Out of the darkness a demented thought struck him. Maybe the spider didn't signal, at least not for help. Perhaps that white ambling menace existed as the only source of illumination in the realm of darkness, stalking about, preying on the lightless and pitiful victims of night. From the skipping half-light cast by Howard's headlamp emerged a man with ashen skin. Howard jumped mid-stride. "Shit!" he said as he backpedaled. The runner lifted a hand to shield his eyes against the light, casting long fingers of shadow across his face. Howard muttered a half-hearted apology as he fumbled to dim the lamp. The runner took a hesitant step towards Howard and lifted the other hand towards the source of light. He wore a short loincloth that hung off his hips and only barely covered his crotch. Matted white hairs spilled off his head, down his neck and shoulders, and reached the middle of his back. His beard stretched to his chest, stained with blacks and browns and yellows. He took another step toward Howard, his chest rising and falling slightly. Over the reek of his own sweat, Howard could smell the runner. He stank of piss and blood. As he drew closer, Howard saw his face. Pale skin hung loosely about high cheekbones, face pocked by wrinkles and scars, purpled lips pulled back in a sneer, bearing a sparse number of brown teeth in fierce defiance of the light. Strands of hair streamed down in front of that sagging face, sticking in the long tendrils of his beard. Howard thought of a painting he had seen of Moses, leaning on a staff, beard and hair blown by the force of a bush, consumed in sacred conflagration. He could hear Deb in his head, panic in her voice. "You saw what on your run? You can't run like this anymore, Howard. You're not going to come back one of these times, and then who will take care of me?" The aged runner took one more step and stood peering at Howard, hand still raised. The extended hand tapped the bolt once and shot back as though the light would burn. Howard smiled and said, "It's an LED. Very little heat. Look at it. Doesn't burn." Here is the hand, and it rested in front of the headlamp. He wondered about how this guy had never seen a headlamp. They stood there chuffing the frigid night air, staring at one another in the dim light. Gazing into chalky eyes, Howard felt the panic start to soften as the adrenaline settled in his veins and the night air drew words from his mouth. "I need a Moses."
I'm Chris Davis, and someone made a mistake because I got third in poetry. I have to say go to sthollow.org, because Charles is right there. Yeah. This is called Observation Log, November 8, 2016, aka Cafeteria Galaxy. A universe of identical particle-board spheres, orbiting under the nebulous fluorescent light, each occupied by the same cluster of fault-lined asteroids, filling their black holes with freeze-dried, gluten-free, multi-processed food matter, and expelling trivial gases about the microscopic craters in their lives. I spot one occasionally, a being that goes deeper than the surface, a solitary satellite rotating around their sphere, minding the instruments, ignoring the screens, but keeping an eye on the alarm system, attempting to avert an impact. But there are simply too many asteroids. Observing from my station, I lean back from the panel and take in a deep breath of artificially enhanced air. When no one is trying my frequency, I can simply drift in the wavelengths. And this poem is called Modern Poetry. I really like writing poems about poetry, and it's dedicated to Josh Sales, who last semester turned in one of his final final poems for a portfolio that he told me he called the Chris Davis poem, because it's about how writing poems about poetry is stupid. So, gesticulations of grandeur, like tripping down the street after your cousin with pants around your ankles spouting dumbass vernacular. A facetious attempt to prove the impossible status of erudite. Stuttering iambic enjambment through loquacious lips. An unfitting feat in place of the usual esoteric syntax. Like, fuck, that fucking shit, like, fucking sucked. A refrain from the arcane. Belie your friends with an aphora and trochaic tetrameter only 5 feet away. But how many stressed, unstressed stanzas form an authentic moment of brainy thinks? How long can we feign the fastidious paradox before we faux pas ourselves into the paper shredder? In the end, the metaphor is a volume of end rhymes and imagery just waiting to turn on you, the torn out pages of dramatic monologue.
So we're gonna try something interesting.
It's just in the files over
So I'm a cartoonist, and I wrote a cartoon, and I told Charles I can't read it. He's like, read it anyway, so I get to do this. My name is Shay Larson. I won the second place in graduate nonfiction, and this is my piece titled Cloven.
As far as we know, this is the very first comic book reading.
Yeah, as far as we know, this is the very first comic book reading ever, because you don't read comic books.
Yeah.
All right. My mother makes chicken noodle soup this way. Bow tie noodles dancing in the yellow foam of boiling broth, fragrant steam lifting in thick billows. Her fingertips shone red from the heat. I love to cook. Despite my hesitation and my frustration, all my doubts. I love cooking the way my great-grandfather loved farming. The cultivation of the earth, the making of something from nothing. But the garlic. I struggle to chop the garlic with its odd shape and slick cloves, and it needs to be minced really, not chopped. But my knife is dull and my hand unsteady. And the garlic. It's store-bought, plucked from a bin of identical bulbs, wisps of skin littering the linoleum aisle floor, 3 for $1, pale, white, weak. My father grew good garlic. He planted the bulbs in the fall, allowed them to gestate all winter in the frozen ground. When the sun warmed the soil, he uprooted the bulbs from their folds in the earth. Rows of pearly garlic adorned the lawn, the white clover, and the yellow dandelion patches. We baked them whole with a kiss of olive oil. Split the cloves over slices of bread still oven hot, steam tracing across the serrated blade of the knife. Years later, I still chop garlic awkwardly, haltingly. Rub the root's clear blood between my fingertips. The wafer skin of the bulbs cling to my palms. I can't seem to shake them. Thank you.
Now that was good, huh? I just have one more, just a couple more words to write because I want to do a quick synopsis of what you heard tonight because it was so good. I could hardly stand it. Here it is. So, Abby, how we fall. All blacks, the limbs and leaves twisting, the baby's breath a spray of thin white fronding over the face and pulpit, funereal. How many times we fall. Kyle, strawberry follicles, pale blue river, thin tendrils of doubt, a squall rises, the anger. Flash floods kill more people than all other weather events. How many times, Andrew R., anonymity, a watercolor, peach aroma, and then we are gone. We so easily wash off. Sweet mist of blood cascading, cat, breach. The diesels, the cyclical veins of salmon, Eau Clark Fork, Missoula, the blood to push through, monumental secret, the shock, a drowning, no matter how lightly you've kept it, oh cancer, oh ranching, the nightmare that plagues us and follows, Kioki. My mother says I killed my baby brother, smoke smoldering up through the roof, the ghost of a possible memory, the sunflowers tall and leaning heavy into the curtains, the recollection melting like snowflakes, the letter, who to believe. We lock the blade in place and wipe our sweaty palms, regret, regret, regret. Mackenzie, to save us, redefine a certain bliss, an indentation, the halo of gravity, heartbreaking in 3 dimensions, every morning. Brandon, in the wetted down folds of perfection, a controlled dive of ducks, unsuspecting, wings fanning out through brilliant light. Fairness is only a word. Justin, that winter, doom of snow, a fox, the dream of crystallizing blade, the smell of molding hay, snakes that hide in crawl spaces. What we find is chaos. What we know is the metallic sheen, spiraling of need, milling until the enlightenment. Take off your shoes and hand that last bit over. Flinch. The cat, its soft back, the hand that drops it mangled, your body shiny with hurt, unpeeling, the Plathian woman, mouse, shrew, the bones, the animation, and no place of a promise, table edges not where we imagine, enlightenment, the scabs. Andrew, for I am your Messiah, saith the owl, and I am the signal, the menace, the ashen eye that scans a face popped and sagging as though Chris, a universe of particle board spheres, all the microscopic wavelengths of esoterica, how many metaphors, oh how we fall. Shay, cloven, dancing in the yellow broth, I love the cultivation, but my knife, oh, the folds of perfect garlic, my knife, oh, can cut only the roots, clear, bold. Aren't they good? These people that read? So, we've got And we've got time, I think, for those three. Yeah, it's 8:20, so let's do those three, and then we better go home. So we have Luke Lemon, Amy Blakely, and Felicia Rose.
Hi, you might have noticed some of my blurry photography up there. So. I also write poems, and this one is called The Parrot, and it's a parody of Edgar Allan Poe's The Raven. Mine isn't nearly as depressing. Once upon a midnight dreary, while I sat there, weak and teary, crying at the prospect that the past few years had been a complete bore, while I nodded, nearly napping, suddenly there came a tapping, as some pirate loudly rapping at me quarter's door. "'Tis be some pirate," I sputtered, tapping at me quarter's door. This be it and nothing more. Ah, distinctly I remember, staring at the dying ember, was getting hit by some water falling through the cracks of the floor. Eagerly I wished the morrow, vainly I tried to borrow from me ship's log end of sorrow, sorrow for the lost Shanor, for the rare and beautiful schooner who I had Christian Shanor, nameless here forevermore. So I sat there, sad and certain, because me room was a curtain to the outside world that I had once loved and lost before. So that now, still the beating on me door, I stood repeating, "'Tis be some pirate entreating entrance at me quarter's door. Some late drunk pirate entreating entrance at me quarter's door. This be it and nothing more." Presently me voice grew stronger, hesitating then no longer. "Ye scurvy dog!" roared I. "Ye woke me from me sleeping more. See, the fact be I was napping, and so loudly ye came rapping, and annoyed me by your tapping at me quarter's door, that I didn't want to see ye." Here I opened wide the door. Darkness there, and nothing more. Deep into the darkness peering, long I stood there, wondering, jeering, laughing, dreaming dreams no sane man ever dared to dream before. But me courage was unbroken, and the darkness gave no token, and the only word there spoken was the whispered word Shanor. This I whispered, and it echoed, murmured back the word Shanor. Merely this, and nothing more. Then into the bedroom turning, all me soul within me burning. Soon I heard a tapping somewhat softer than before. "Surely," I yelled, "surely there be something as me window lattice. Let me see then what thereat is, and this mystery explore. Let me heart be still a moment, and this mystery explore. 'Tis the wind, and nothing more." Open here I flung the shutter, when with many a flirt and flutter, in there stepped a flustered parrot of the happy times of yore. Not the least obeisance made he, not an instant stopped or stayed he, but without the charm of lady, perched above me quarter's door. Perched upon a bust of Neptune just above me quarter's door. Perched and sat, and nothing more. Then this colourful bird beguiling all me sat fancy into smiling by the light and gay decorum of the countenance it wore. "Though your crest be shorn and shaven, ye," said I, "art sure no raven. Ye made me window a haven after wandering about the shore. Tell me what your heavenly name be, that I may ye adore." Quoth the parrot, "Nevermore." Much I marvel this ungainly fowl to have discoursed so plainly that one word, as if his soul in that one word he did outpour. For we cannot help but agree in that no Caribbean being ever yet was blessed with seeing bird above his quarter's door, bird or beast upon the sculptured bust above his quarter's door, with such a name as Nevermore. But that parrot still beguiling all me sad soul into smiling, straight I will this wooden chair in front of bird and bust and door. Then upon the armchair sinking, I betook myself to Lincoln fancy and a fancy, thinking what this colourful bird of yore, what this happy, ungainly, pleasant and colourful bird of yore meant and squawking nevermore. This I sat engaged in guessing, but no syllable expressing, to the fowl whose curious eyes now gazed into me bosom's core. This and more I sat divining, with me head at ease reclining, on the armchair's engraved twining that the lamplight gloated o'er, on the brilliant bright blue sea with the lamplight glowing o'er. She shall sail nevermore. Then methought the air grew denser, perfumed from an unseen centre, swung by mermaids, whose faint tail slaps sounded on the wooden floor. "Beast," I cried, "Neptune hath lent thee, by these mermaids he hath sent thee. Respite, respite, let me flee and forget this lost Shanor. Let me buy another schooner and forget this lost Shanor," quoth the parrot. "Nevermore." "Ye there," said I, "thing of sea talk, ye should not know how I walk. How could ye know I'm broke and cannot go by boats ashore? Desolate, yet all undaunted, on this desert land enchanted, on this home by horror haunted. Tell me truly, I implore. Can I fill me coffers to buy a ship? Tell me, I implore." Quoth the parrot, "Nevermore." "Ye there," said I, "thing of sea talk, ye should not know how I walk.
by Davy Jones' locker, by the depths of the sea that we adore. Tell this soul by the moon's lunar shine if I can see her sooner, that I can own that great schooner whom I had christened Shanor. Still the great and mighty schooner whom Neptune named Shanor, quoth the parrot. Nevermore. Be that a word of signing bird or fiend, I shrieked upstarting. Get ye back into the tempest and into Neptune's cursed shore. Leave no feather of the token of that lie your soul hath spoken. Leave me loneliness unbroken, quit the bust above me door. Take your beak from out me heart and take your form from off me door, quoth the parrot. Nevermore. And the parrot, never flame, still be sitting, on the pallid bust of Neptune just above me quarter's door. And his eyes of all the seamen of a pirate that be dreaming, and the lamplight o'er him streaming throws his shadow on the floor. And me thoughts from out that shadow that lies floating on the floor, he shall be lifted nevermore.
My poem's not nearly as fun as that. This poem's called Snakeskin. There were pieces to the puzzle I threw away before I could praise the completed picture. I ignored the holes, many on the sides, my remaining edges rough. Bottom corners, I have no anchor. One from the center, a permanent pain in my chest. I wanted to be like a river rock, rolling whichever way the pressure led, unconcerned and uncaring, pressed smooth and humble with simple repetitive motions so subtle it's easy to forget the process is long and painful, pounding down sticky human flesh until it becomes flat and shiny, no more unique than any other similar stone. I wish I could have been happy with the dullness that only shines to a practiced eye under carefully controlled circumstance. I shed lies that used to be security. I no longer know which part of me is most true. The tattered covering my body says I must let go, or the one growing in behind to replace it. I am like a child suddenly grown into adolescence, my old comforts grown small, trapping skin too large for me to fill. Our last open mic speaker is going to opt to read in the summer, and please remember that Helicon West this summer is every fourth Thursday of the month in the Logan Library, Bonneville room, and you could all read something. Open mic all summer long. It's going to be great. Thank you for coming tonight. Thank you for being Helicon. Thanks, readers. Bye-bye.